Welcome to today's library seminar titled What You Didn't Know About the Department of Commerce Gold and Silver Awards. I'm Lisa Clark, reference librarian at the NOAA Central Library. Before I introduce our speakers, here are a few logistical tips to help you enjoy our presentation today. If you're having trouble with the audio or the visual components of GoToWebinar, please log out and rejoin us again. This usually resolves most of our technical issues. Our presentation is being recorded and will be available on the NOAA Central Library YouTube channel, as well as the Library Seminars website by later today. We will also be accepting questions throughout the webinar, which Gerry and Darryl will address at the end of their presentation. Please feel free to type your questions in the question box on the right side of the screen anytime. If you're interested in the slides from today's presentation, you can also download them on the right where it says handouts. So now let me get this library seminar started and introduce today's speakers, Dr. Gerry Coffee and Darryl Thomas. Dr. Gerry Coffee is the OAR Awards Program Manager. He has worked for Deloitte, the Dept of Treasury, and several other federal agencies. His expertise is in qualitative and quantitative analysis with a specialty in building data collection instruments. Darryl Thomas has been with NOAA's Office of Human Capital Services, Human Capital Strategies Division's Centers of Expertise for 4 years. He is currently NOAA's Awards and Recognition Program Manager. Prior to coming to NOAA, he retired from the U.S. Navy after serving for 20 years. Thank you for your service. He holds a bachelor's in world literature, a master's in computer management, an MBA in organizational psychology and development, Lean Six Sigma green and black belts, workforce development professional certification, HCI Workforce Planning Certification, and currently he's pursuing his doctorate in management and organizational development. Whew. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here. The screen is yours.
It's great to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. Wow, Darryl, that was such a rousing introduction. I don't know if the rest of us can live up to it. All those things.
You always tease me saying that I read too much. Now you know why.
All right, so everyone, welcome today. This is what you didn't know about the DOC Gold and Silver Award. Darryl and I are completing a series, and eventually we will more than likely make it through all of the NOAA DOC awards. And in this series, we want to really target a lot of questions. We often receive many questions about what is the difference between what makes a gold nomination, what makes a silver, what's a bronze nomination, how do I write it, what are some tips that you can provide to me. So we hope this presentation will demystify any of the mysterious questions that you have or any of the curiosities that are percolating in your brains, so that we can help get better nominations for NOAA, because at the end of the day, we're all NOAA employees, NOAA #1, and we want NOAA to win. I put that plug in there to say it, but you know, we want all of DOC to win, but we want NOAA to win. Next slide. Keep in mind, this presentation is designed to be an informative, educational, engaging dialogue between NOAA Awards POCs and the presenters today. Disclaimer, this presentation is based on a combination of facts, DOC approved information, and best practices. Please consult your line office, staff office, awards, POCs for more information and guidance, or please contact NOAA Awards directly for if you have detailed questions. Next slide. When thinking about the gold and silver medal, this medal recognizes individuals, groups, organizations, and joint organizations of federal employees throughout the Department of Commerce for superior performance. This is the highest honor that can be granted by the Secretary of DOC. The annual award ceremony is normally held in Washington, D.C., honoring the recipients' accomplishments to NOAA and the DOC mission. However, this year, it did not happen. We are hosting the NOAA Awards this year virtually, and the DOC Awards, if I'm not correct, will be, Darryl, a DOC award winners website and not a ceremony at all. But normally it would be held in Washington, D.C. at the Department of Commerce.
And the actual, believe it or not, the results just came out like yesterday. So we will be sending out the information to all of the POCs as far as this year's gold and silver winners.
Excellent. We look forward to hearing that. Next slide. There are several, next slide. There are several categories for gold and silver, And we want to be clear about the categories, although the categories are the same for each medal, but there is a distinction in between the categories themselves. So with this being the highest honor that can be granted for distinguished performance and characterized for gold, we have a few of the following categories. Some of the categories are leadership, personal and professional excellence, scientific engineering and achievement, organizational development, customer service, administrative and technical support, and heroism. And in order to warrant a gold, a contribution must focus on qualitative and quantitative performance measures reflected in the department's strategic plan and be identified in those following areas. Keep in mind, when you also receive your gold and silver nomination form from Darryl, it does highlight the same information as well. So in terms of a silver, this is the second highest honorary award granted by the Secretary of Commerce, and is defined as exceptional performance characterized by noteworthy or superlative contributions having a direct and lasting impact, and I would also say far-reaching impact within the department. And that would serve specifically to those same categories of leadership, personal and professional excellence, scientific engineering and achievement, organization development, customer service, administrative and tech support, and heroism. And those things and the silver award also must align to the department's strategic plan. Next slide. Let's break those down and let's talk a little further. In terms of leadership, leadership recognizes personal leadership management of an organization that produced substantial innovative achievement resulting in high quality service to the agency. So that you could use as an example, providing a process that could incorporate perhaps a Lean Six Sigma methodology that saved the agency, the department, millions of dollars, cut a process, increased efficiency of some existing program, process, or procedure. In addition, this area recognizes creativity, innovation, external awareness, flexibility, which is always key, resilience, motivation, strategic thinking, and vision. But what you didn't know was achievements may not be included to or limited to the following: significant improvements in program effectiveness, efficient use of resources, sensitive and difficult assignments of major importance achieved through great personal commitment, initiative, and competence, improvement in labor management relations, leadership that encourages employees freedom to make decisions to maximize the scope for individual initiatives within a given job, acumen in developing breakthrough strategies or concepts and finding new and effective ways of accomplishing agency's missions, leadership in the productive use of teams that cross organizational and agency boundaries, leadership that models results behaviors conducive to the effective management of diversity. Next slide. Personal and professional excellence recognizes those that demonstrate outstanding level of accomplishments in the agency's missions. Achievements that are to be derived from all occupations and functional areas of the department, including but are not limited to administration, information technology, labor management relations, legal, and trade. Next slide. Organizational development. This section or particular subcategory recognizes those accomplishments contribute to creating an organizational culture that is consistently learning and growing, one that maximizes employee potential and fosters high ethical standards. Achievements may include, but are not limited to, and this is the part that you didn't know, designing and implementing successful organizational-wide programs that facilitate meetings, management, supervisory responsibilities for mentoring and coaching, being widely recognized as an individual for capabilities and relationships have had a direct and positive impact on the career development of significant number of others, creating an environment in which teamwork thrives, one that reflects knowledge sharing, trust, pride, commitment, self-direction, group identity, and one in which teams have produced extraordinary results. Next slide. Scientific and engineering. Scientific engineering achievement recognizes technological breakthroughs that resolve long-standing problems, radically advance the state of the art, significantly impact commerce or the economy, significantly advance the understanding, knowledge, and mastery of a given discipline. Achievements may include, but are not limited to, authorship and editorship that affect the primary principles of the discipline involved, opening up new fields of inquiry, redefining major issues or investigation, contributions to the body of knowledge in a given field. Next slide. Customer service, one of our favorite ones at NOAA. Recognizing those who provide or foster a culture that nurtures world-class customer service. Achievements in customer service may include, but are not limited to, activities related to establishing measurements and standards for improving customer service, implementing and consistently assessing performance against standards for improvements, and accomplishments are expressed in measurable terms: cycle time, cost reduction, increased courtesy, quality to customers. Next slide. Administrative and technical support. Recognizing those that demonstrate an outstanding level of administrative accomplishments in providing administrative and technical support. Achievements reflect dedication and hard work that enable or assist the work of fellow employees, and many include, but are not limited to, advancing the goals of the team, office, division, operating unit, or department through outstanding performance. Creative or innovative problem solving, developing new systems, methods, and procedures. Next slide. Heroism. Recognizing a special one-time act or act of heroism by an employer or group of employees that is in the public interest or connected with or related to official employment. Heroism is defined as exhibiting courage, daring, and self-sacrifice. Accomplishments may include, but are not limited to, volunteer risking one's own life, knowing while saving or attempting to save the life of another person. Displaying extraordinary skills or resourcefulness in assisting law enforcement officers, firefighters, or search and rescue professionals in saving or attempting to save the life of another person. Demonstrating courage in risking one's own life to protect or preserve government or private property. Next slide.
So as Gerry had mentioned, all of those categories there are literally all of the various categories that you have in the award ceremony. I mean, for these particular gold and silver awards. However, one of the things that we always have issues with is people trying to understand, well, how do you group those people? Okay, there's three main areas. You have your organizational awards, your group awards, and then your individual awards. Organizational awards basically come into two different categories. You have the single organization, which means, for example, OAR is a single organization. Or it could be a joint organization. An example of that would be OAR, NOS, and possibly OMAO. That would be considered a joint organization. However, what differs from a joint and a group is a group actually itemizes the number, has a limit on the number of people that can actually be on that particular award. On that award, you can only have 10, and it has to have 10 individual names. So it can't be a mixture of John, Henry, and Carol, along with a scientific lab. That's not exactly a group. The group literally lists the names of the individual people. And then finally, you have the individual award, which is just one single person. So make sure you're mindful of when you're filling out the information, and especially on the awards, nomination form, that you understand the three different categories and how they're actually set. Again, you have your organizational category, you have your group category, and then you have your individual. Organizational, as I mentioned before, can be the organizations as well as the subunits individually, or you can also have them mixed in as a group. What I did mention is you can only have at least 2 or 3 at max. For the group, the max number you can have is 10, and for the individual, the max you can have is 1. And again, we gotta stress there's no mixing and matching. Next slide, please. So, what is the exact process for the entire gold and silver? Of course, first thing we do is there's a call for a nomination that comes out. Normally that comes out around, I would say, June, maybe July timeframe. What that tells, that gives them enough time for that call to go out to the to the different line of staff offices. And what they do is they set their individual times to let you know when you have to have that award back, because once that nomination goes to that board, once the nomination goes to that POC, that awards POC, it still has to go through review for a PMAC. The PMAC is basically the individual deciding board within that line of staff office. Once the award comes from the PMAC, then what they do is they make sure that it gets to my office by the designated date. Next slide, please. The next step in the process is the one that is always the most time consuming. Once we receive all the award nominations, we have to go through and verify everything. Got to make sure that it's the correct type, that there isn't any mixtures of whether or not there was a group, whether or not there was a correct group. We also have to, most importantly, make sure that they have the correct names. A lot of times with the nominations, the problems that come up is that, especially when we're trying to do the good standing process, is that people go by their nicknames, or they don't use a name that actually is listed with that's listed in the OMPF. So it's important to make sure that not only that you have the correct name, and that it's also spelled correctly. If not, that can actually really impede, in some cases, causes the award, the nomination to be rejected, because if we can't identify the person, we can't prove whether or not they were in good standings. And after that, we also have to make sure that the format is correct. In previous, my predecessors, what they would do is that if there was an adjustment that needed to be made, they would go ahead and do it. Unfortunately, with the gold and silver, it does not only just stops with us, it actually goes up to DOC. DOC has an electronic system that is strictly formatted by character count, and in that character count, it includes punctuation and spaces. So and rather than just trying to rewrite instead of sending any things back, they would just, my predecessors would just go ahead and just rewrite it so it would fit. I think basically that's actually a disservice to the person who's doing the nomination. So I have been getting a lot of questions on, well, why is the form changed and is this something new? Actually, it's not anything new. It's just really the format that's actually set by DOC. That's the system that they use. So what I did this year is I wanted to make sure that your words are actually heard, and we didn't have to go in and do any alterations. And so I made sure that the form was set by the way the character count was set for their particular system. And the best thing I like is that it is always funny is when you have to do that good standings check. And what I mean by it's funny is because, again, some people will use nicknames rather than using their real names. I understand that everyone, even though your name is Richard, but everyone in the office calls you Jim, even your email may say Jim. It still doesn't help with the fact that we can't do the check on you because that's not the name that's actually listed when you were hired. So it is vital that you make sure that you have the correct name and the correct spelling. And then once all of that,
Darryl, if my name is Coffee Beans, you can't find me?
You can't, I cannot find Coffee Beans. I'm sorry. I tried, but no. It has to be either Gary, G. Gary, or Gerry Coffee. So after all of that is done, the final step is everything is packaged and put on spreadsheets, and also it's put on spreadsheets and formulated to be sent to the NIAB. And the NIAB is the NOAA's Incentive Awards Board. There are representatives from each of the line of staff offices that sit on a board that actually reads and reviews all of the information, all the nominations. Next slide, please.
Hey, Darryl, can we go back to that slide for just one thing? I'd like to add something regarding the character count. Regarding the character count, Darryl and I both received quite a number of questions regarding the forms. And one of the things that we would highly encourage for the DOC Gold and Silver form, or any of the forms, particularly as these forms are updated yearly, please follow the directions on the form. If the particular field says you only get 500 characters, you only get 500 characters. There is no way around it. We understand that these are probably very small spaces to write, outstanding or exemplary information. But you will have to be concise with the information that you provide in those, and have to get it down to whatever the form. And each subsection has a specific little header at the top saying this specific section and justification has a character count of X amount of characters. So you really have to follow that. That is a very, very easy way to get your form rejected from NOAA Awards.
Okay, thank you. Next slide. Okay, as I discussed, there's a review process, and it's actually a straight scoring system. The scoring system goes from 1 to 5, 5 being the best, 1 being not so high. So what each of the board members do is they actually have a set allotted time period, and they go through and they literally do their anonymous scores. So each board member has no idea what the other one scored. Then once that's done, those spreadsheets are actually sent back to the awards manager, me. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the scoring system, and this is one of the key things people always ask. So, what are they basing their scores off? Really, believe it or not, there is key things that they look for. They look for whether or not, does it have an impact? If it has a high impact, is that impact something that impacts NOAA as well as DOC or the economy? At that point, it would score higher. But if it's just something that impacts maybe that particular office or even that operating unit, then that's how a lot of them end up being scored low. Another thing I would mention is you have to understand your audience and who you're writing this nomination to. There are a lot of scientists that are here. However, there are not a lot of scientists that are reading these nominations, in particular when you're going all the way up to the DOC level. So you want to make sure you be mindful about that. So if you do a nomination, you completely write it in as though it was a scientific paper with all of the acronyms, I can guarantee you not everyone's going to actually understand it. Maybe the ones in your community will, but some of the board members may not actually be that up to par as to what the information is, and they may end up scoring you low because it's not clear exactly what you actually want this nomination to portray or what you want this nomination to award. Next slide. Okay. As I mentioned, it would go scores from 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest. And in the previous slide, it actually shows some of the categories where as the board members are reading the particular nomination, and given that this is just set for NOAA. So as they're reading the nomination, these are some of the things that they're looking at. And then whether or not it's, as I mentioned before, if it's impact, how far does it impact? How much does it impact? Does it follow the strategic plan? Does it just follow NOAA's strategic plan? Does it follow DOC's strategic plan? Does that information actually portrayed within the nomination? So again, those are some of the things that you have to make sure that, in order to get those higher scores, not only that you're portraying that information, you're showing those connections, but you're also putting it in plain language. Because again, you have to make sure you're addressing your correct audience, and your audience is that of multiple diversity, multiple inclusion. So you have to make sure that nomination is very inclusive. Next slide, please. So after they do the full process of the nominations, I receive them all, then the scores are averaged. Once the scores are averaged, of course, the board members are see those scores. So next thing we do is we look at which scores have fallen above the standard median that's been set by the board. The standard median right now is 3.6. So if a nomination falls above that, then your score is higher than that from the average, then that nomination is placed into a particular group. So, could have a later discussion. If there's some that falls below that, then that's when the board starts to look at, okay, with this particular nomination, was there something else? So when you have those that fall below that category, what happens is that when we have a live meeting, that's when a lot of the debates start coming in. We're looking at this nomination. Why did it fall? Was it missing something? Was it not clear? And one of the other things that we do is that on the board, we also request that the members kind of jot down little notes. Let us know, it's like, okay, if you scored that low, why did you score low? Was there something missing? So that also helps when we get ready to get into the actual correction, not me, but them, when they actually get ready to start debating about the different, take it back, not debating, discussing. When they start discussing the different categories, what they want to make sure is they understand, well, I scored this high, but you scored this low. Why did you score this low? And they already see some of the reasons. So that's when then the different line office representatives can, if they feel as though they can defend that nomination, then they can defend it, and then at the board can decide, okay, you know what, this is what we're looking for. Let's send that back and have them to do it so it actually would score higher. Next slide. All right. Now, the clincher about this one, unlike the bronze, where the NOAA's undersecretary can pretty much give as many as you want. We're only limited to a combination of 20 gold and silver. So no, it's not 20 gold and 20 silver. No, it's 20 gold and silver together. So that's where a lot of the debates comes in, and a lot of the stress comes in. Is like, okay, so you're trying to compete for these particular ones, these 20 spots. Some years you have excellent nominations, and it is really a huge debate between the offices on which one should go forward. My first year was here. There was hardly any debate, and I think we only had like 12 that went forward, 12 to 15 that went forward that year. So it is key to understand how to make sure that I understand a lot of people think this, this is the highest honor that you can get. You either get a gold or get a silver. But you also have to remember one thing too. Within these 20, if you actually submit a nomination and you feel as though that work warrants a gold medal, however, the board may see it, and the board may say, you know what, it still stands out, but it's not that distinguished to say gold, but it does say silver. The board can knock your nomination down to a silver. And then the final decision after everything is said is done, is it actually the final decision on which 20 would move forward is up to the undersecretary. What he does, and I'm really happy about this, is that he literally reads every nomination. But prior to the meetings that we have, he always goes through, always verifies. And then once we have our meeting, he gives his opinion. I think this should go forward. I think this should be knocked down. And then actually he has the authority out of those gold and silver nominations that have gone past the board. He has authority to actually even knock them down further to a bronze and award them himself. So even though even though you may submit your nomination as a gold, the board may knock it down to a silver. Dr. Jacobs, right then and there, while we're going through the meeting, can decide, you know what, rather than send this through the process, I think, I'll just go ahead and give them a bronze. So that is an actuality fact that can happen. So once it goes through once Dr. Jacobs concurs and approves, then the package is actually sent to its final stages, and that's actually going to the approval board, the DIAP, which is a DOC version of the NIAP. Now, I know I've said a lot so far, and it seems as though there's going from board to board to board to board, when in actuality it does, because it goes through a lot of clearing processes. And when people's like, well, why does it take so long? Well, that's the main reason why. Because it goes through so many multiple boards, you have to make sure that everyone is seeing the information and it is actually approved. Not only that, each time it goes through a different board, it actually goes through another good standings check. So if there's something that even though I may have done a good standings check in November, when it goes to the DIAP in January, they do a good standings check before they send it to the POC, the awards POC. DOC does an awards check, good standings check before he sends it to the DIAP. And then after those awards are actually approved, another check is done to make sure that there is no issues. Because you have to remember, with these particular awards, you are representing the organization. And having some little problems or little issues or possibly a couple of charges really could look bad for the organization. All right, so once the DIAP has actually approved the nominations, then at that point in time, it's sent to the secretary, the final phase. And then as he goes through them and his staff goes through them, then they give their final blessing. At that point in time, we receive the information, and then ultimately they release the message saying which nominations were winners. And as I mentioned, I just got that notice yesterday. All right, next slide. So, what makes a good nomination? Simple, clear story. That's it, really, a clear story from start to finish. Make sure you also understand your audience. Being you're telling that story, make sure anybody can read it. I always make this little joke. If my 8-year-old niece can understand a paper, a 12-point paper that I've written, then anybody can understand it. And that's when, and the reason I say that is because at that point I'm looking at an 8-year-old and an audience on out. So that means that pretty much anybody can understand that. Also, you want to make sure that it's not too complex. I understand there's a lot of science that's out there. I understand there's a lot of fabulous things that are being done. But if it is so complex that I don't understand how great it is, how can we award it? So make sure you understand that that language. And it's okay to have someone else just to take a look at it that's not really a science-based person, and just kind of say, does this make any sense? Can you actually understand what's going on with this? That's, like I said, that's one of my recommendations, but you don't necessarily have to do that. Also, you have to be able to answer that so what question. So why is this so great? So how do you know that this had such an impact? I have to make something that really caught my attention on one of the nominations that actually did win, and it was a statement that was in there. And I thought it was so funny, and the reason I never forget it was because it was, even though it seemed as though it was misplaced, but then I realized that that statement actually showed how not only did the work that was done by that particular by that particular group, but it followed along NOAA's mission, it followed along DOT's strategic plan, and also it had an effect on the community. So that went above and beyond. And the statement was, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have been able to save my dog and his daddy. So that was actually put out nationally. So that was really within the nomination. At first, when I read it, I was thinking, that didn't make any sense. But in actuality, it did, because it showed the full connection of not only with NOAA, with DOC, but also to the commitment we had to the community. Next slide. So now we're down to the favorite part that I like to call myth or fact. Gary?
Sorry, there are no prizes today, but we hope that the prize will be that your nominations will be outstanding. So I will ask the question, and if you'd like to use the chat box, feel free to use the chat box and put in either myth or fact. Let's play along. Question 1. Gold and silver medals recognize individuals, groups, organizations, or joint organizations, federal employees for superior performance. This is the highest honor that can be granted by the Secretary for Oceans and Atmosphere. The Gold and Silver Medal Program is managed by NOAA with oversight by DOC. Myth or fact? I'm going to give it 10 seconds.
How are we doing on time? I know we're kind of quick.
We're doing great on time.
Okay.
We're going to try to reserve the last 15 to 20 minutes of the presentation for questions, because I know people are dying at the edge of their seat with popcorns and Diet Cokes, ready to ask questions.
Not the Diet Coke.
Well, you got to keep your sugar content down.
Okay, I agree.
Or people choose, you can have white wine, your choice.
Very funny. So,
All right.
Lisa, how are we doing on the questions?
Lisa, do we have, so the answer is myth. How do we do, Lisa? Because I can't see the chat box.
Looking now, it looks like we had three facts and one myth.
Okay, well, actually, it is a myth, though. And the main reason it's a myth is because the bronze is really the one that's the undersecond NOAA can award. However, DOC is the only one that governs the gold and silver, and they govern the gold and silver for all of the bureaus. So that includes NIST as well as the other ones. All right, next question.
The bureaus are prohibited from automatically granting a bronze medal to an individual, group, or organization that was not recommended for a gold or a silver. Myth or fact? We're going to give it about 10 seconds here. All right, Lisa, we see what's in the chat box.
It's a lot of myths coming up here.
A lot of myths. Let's see what the answer is. Survey says
that is correct. It is a myth. It is a myth. As I mentioned within the presentation, if the Undersecretary of NOAA decides, you know what, I would rather go, we can go ahead and I'll grant these a bronze, he can. However, it's not necessarily, it's not always an automatic. Or prime example, in the past, some people would have the impression that if a gold and silver that went up for gold and silver but was not selected, then it automatically becomes a bronze. No, it has to be reconsidered to become a bronze. It doesn't automatically go. So it will go back in those cases, it will go back to the board. And then the board would say, then it would be presented to the board in simple fashion. These nominations went up for gold. You approved them for gold and silver. However, they were not selected for gold and silver. we'd like to recommend that they be selected for bronze and send their recommendation up to the undersec. And then at that point in time, then they'll go ahead and say, then he'll probably go ahead and say yes. But it's not an automatic thing. All right, let's go to the last one. The next question.
10 people or more are allowed to be on a nomination for a gold and silver, myth or fact? I know this one by heart.
The myths are rolling in. One fact, myth. Okay, so let's see what the answer is.
That is correct. It is a myth. And the main reason is, and I get this every year, every time this comes around, can we put an exception? No. DOC is strong on the fact that they only will allow 10 people on a group award. They will not bend or anything to that aspect. I've asked several times and all they do is just giggle and say no. So just remember, when you're doing the nomination, if you're doing a group award, and remember, no mixing and matching, it can only have a maximum of 10 names.
10 people, 10, only 10. Can't add the 11th, can't add the executive, can't add Dr. Jacobs, and we love Dr. Jacobs, but 10 people.
Just 10 names, just 10 names. All right, and the last question.
Gold and silver medals may only be granted in the annual award cycle in which the accomplishment was completed. Myth or fact? And this is a question we have been asked at least 10 times just in this award cycle that is open.
All right, this is getting a lot of mixed reviews here. Fact and myth. Fact. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think fact's ahead.
Facts ahead. Let's see.
It is correct. It is a fact. The gold and silver, unlike the bronze award, is actually set within a certain time period, and it's normally a year cycle time period. So when we said the 2021 cycle, the 2021 cycle starts in the previous year, that April 1st of the previous year, so it'll be 2020, and it'll go all the way up to 2021 March 31st. I think there's 31 days. January, February, March. Yeah, there's 31. There's 31 days. Yeah, okay, yeah, I decided to double check again. There's 31 days in March, so it'll go up to the 31st day of March 2021. So you have to remember the work that you're doing, it goes to that period. However, if your work finishes, if you finish the work prior to that, it's still within a cycle, you're still good, but it has to be within that cycle. All right, and our next slide.
This slide really is to illustrate the point of how to keep your nomination, how to get your nominations past your line office. Pretty much I would say every line office has their own internal awards board or some mechanism that they review nominations prior to them going out the door, heading up to Darryl and NOAA Awards. And the first thing I would highly encourage is engage. Engage your awards POC. Find out who that person is, engage them. Ask for feedback, ask questions that you may have some concerns about or need clarity on, because that sort of is the roadmap to go to clear up anything before you start writing the nomination. Also, ask for the opportunity to provide feedback. Second, develop an internal office lab awards committee. You can even go as granular as in the particular division or amongst the team or staffers who normally may write these awards. Develop your own awards committee or just a nomination committee. Ensure multiple sets of eyes see the nominations prior to presenting it. One of the things I and Darryl have discussed at great length, please understand that these nominations are not esoteric. These are not secret. When you're nominating someone, you do not have to keep it a secret. A lot of times people want to nominate, Susie or John, and we don't want them to know because we want them to be a surprise. But Susie or John may be able to provide all the additional information that makes your nomination that much stronger. So I highly encourage engaging any nominee or the executive that's over it or the supervisor. Engage that person in the process so that they can give you the most accurate and current information available. 3, time is not always on your side. Time is, Darryl and I always know that we receive nominations always at the last minute. And so we want to encourage people to start submitting ahead of time. Submit your nominations ahead of time, submit your calls ahead of time so that you have time to modify and amend and edit your nominations, just in case that you find that there is some new breakthrough that happens and you didn't wait to the last minute. Go ahead. You wanted to say something, Darryl?
Yeah. What I was saying about that is that I definitely can agree with him about making sure that you talk to people. There was an example, and no, I'm not going to divulge who it was, but there was actually a request from a particular awards program, and the request was that they needed more information. So the first thing I did is I reached out to the person that sent the nomination. That person in tow reached out to the person the nomination was for, and had me to direct the questions to them. So they were able to clearly answer what the board was looking for, and the nomination did win.
Excellent.
So that's one of the things, you know, I understand it's nice to do that whole shock and surprise, but being nominated sometimes is really, you know, it's just phenomenal for the moral, you know, the morale of the office, and also, you know, to help build that strong organizational culture, which we're constantly striving for. So don't be scared to say, okay, you know what, we want to nominate you for this. We understand some of the work, but you know, what was it that actually, you know, we think is this? Was it this, or was it something else? And believe it or not, that little tidbit of information may be just that thing that will distinguish it, or make that, you know, get that nomination over that little hump. All right.
Absolutely. Think of future calls for nominations as well. So particularly if you submit a nomination, for instance, for gold and silver, and it doesn't do quite as well or make it out of NOAA, then think about perhaps submitting that nomination in a different cycle under a different award, because the impact of that award or the achievement might be great, but it might not have been well suited for gold and silver. But we still want to be able to recognize it in such a way. There are also other vehicles to do, such as Distinguished Career, Administrators Award, Tech Transfer, Bronze. So think about those as well. So those are your future calls that may be coming ahead. Next slide.
We're also looking at expanding too as well, with working with some of the external awards. So you never know where that recognition may come from. And most of all, even though this is a science organization, don't forget about those who actually are not science-based. You know, they are still here doing phenomenal work. It doesn't hurt. That's why we have so many categories that you can look at. You have your customer service category, you have your tech support category, and tech transfer category, and things to that aspect. So make sure you're not only looking at those experiments that are going on, or those ideas of rockets being launched, but what about that person that decided, that was able to negotiate international contracts that literally saved the government $10 million? Now, those are big feats that you also have to look at. It may have taken them 5 years to do it, but the entire thing was finished and accomplished within the cycle. So those are some of the things that you also have to look at. You know, the major impact, making sure you answer that so what question. All right, at this point, let's go ahead and open up for any questions.
So one of the first questions that we have that has come up a couple times, Darryl, is we've converted a contractor to a Fed, and we're excited about it. And we want to know, can we include that particular person on a nomination? They may have been converted while the call was ongoing, and they may have been converted within a pay period or 2 pay periods or such. And they want to know, can they add the contract in the nomination under the federal pretense that they're now a federal employee?
Well, one of the things you have to look at is this: when was the work done? All right. And maybe that person may have been a contract while the work was being done, but that's the key. They were a contract when the work was done and finished. So hence they're not qualified because they're under a contract. That person became federal at a later date, after you finished, after all the work, that particular project was done, that you can't include them, because at that point in time, they were not the status that they were at a status of being a contractor, not being a federal. All right.
Any questions, Lisa, in the chat box?
Absolutely, we've got a couple. By the way, wonderful job, and I love the images that you included in your presentation as well.
That's all, Gary. I messed up on pictures. I ain't gonna lie. I'm serious. I'm great with information. I am great with information, but it would have been black and white if I did it.
Well, I'll start calling you Dr. Picasso then. My first question was received earlier in the presentation, and it asks, question on nomination form. There's a question that says, nominee is eligible on current rating of record, yes or no? Please clarify what this statement is asking. What is meant by current rating of record?
Okay, current rating, what they're looking at is whether or not they're on, how can I put this? Whether or not they're on a PIP, whether or not they're on the 5 scale, and so on and so forth. So mainly what that status is trying to determine is whether or not they're even eligible. Because if they're not on a, if their last evaluation they got and they were not a satisfactory or above, or they're on a performance improvement plan or something like that, then at that point they're not eligible. So that's really what that question is really trying to direct towards.
Okay, great. There's another question. It's a little long, so please forgive me if I stumble a little. It asks, could you clarify this guidance on the form? Section 1 says maximum length 2,000 characters for all 4 questions. Then number 4 under section 1 says maximum length 500 characters for all 4 questions. I am directly copying the text from the form here.
I understand that. I understand what you're saying with that. Now let me go ahead and explain that. All right. When we were writing the form, and I do apologize that that's a small editing error. The maximum for the entire 4 section is 2,000. But what we did is it actually was broken down to 5. It was actually supposed to be saying for that section it's 500. And then there will be another section will probably say 500 and so on and so forth. So that was the issue with that. So that particular section there is just 500 characters. I hope that cleared it out. And thank you for bringing that to my attention. What I'll do is I'll go back and I'll look at the form, and what I'll do is we'll go ahead and correct that error and resend the form out. So since you're saying that you're cutting and pasting, you probably can just go ahead and paste your nomination information to the new form.
Excellent.
Again,
okay, that's
thank
great.
you so much for bringing that to my attention.
Mm-hmm. Well, not me, but next question. Is there any discussion about broadening the group award to also include NOAA contractors, fellows, and Cooperative Institute employees that are involved in some of these achievements?
Actually, I can easily answer that one for you. DOC has a standard. One of the big things that they have is that since this is a federal award, it is designed for our federal employees. So I already know at this particular time, due to contracting aspects and things to that matter, it will not be brought. This will now be expanded to contractors. So, but if you have some of the fellowships that are actually listed as federal employees, then those fellowships, those can be included. But anyone that's listed as a contractor is definitely no.
Okay, great. Another question asks, can you please elaborate the difference between the Bronze Award and the Administrator's Awards, which were announced during this the course of this webinar?
Sure. The Bronze Award itself is it's grouped in with the particular gold, silver, and bronze. They're non-monetary. The administrative and technology transfer are 2 monetary awards. What I mean by monetary is that, yes, you get cash. For the administrator, it's $5,000, and for the tech transfer, it's $2,500. Now, the other key thing about those 2 different programs besides that is the way that they're governed. The Bronze Award, even though it is a DOC program, it's actually approved and authorized by NOAA Undersec. The administrator is authorized by the Undersec, as well as the tech transfer. However, the gold and the silver are strictly authorized and monitored by DOC. So DOC is the one who runs those particular programs. And I hope that helped.
Yeah. The last question I have in the box says, who serves on the review/selection committees? Are committee rosters available to any employee?
For which particular award program are we talking?
This person did not say.
I think they're probably referring, Darryl, to the NOAA Awards Board. Okay.
Well, actually, the review list, each line offices actually, have their representative, and that the names are available. It is one that's selected by the higher ups for each line office who will represent that particular line office. So it's not one of those where this person that's probably a band 2 that really doesn't do anything, well, we're going to make sure they're the ones on the board. You know, it's more or less definitely a senior person within the organization who 9 times out of 10 already sits on the PMAC for that particular line office.
Is the NOAA award, Darryl, made up of only SES personnel?
No.
Could you break that down a little bit further?
Majority of, and actually I think all of them, from my understanding, are mainly made of basically senior enlisted, so the most band 5s, GS-15s. The chair of the board is actually the director of OHCS, which is a SES. And then also the other members that you include, you have your voting members and your non-voting members. Your voting members, of course, is your representative from each one of the line office and one representative that represents the staff and corporate offices. So of course you have someone from NSDIS, someone from NOS, someone from FISH, someone from Weather Service, and you have, of course, OMAO, OAR, and then finally you have that one representative that represents all of the corporate offices. And of course, those people are, like I said, are always either directors or deputy directors, either of a branch or division. So they do have the know on what's going on from their particular office.
Are voting members only SES, or are they a combination of both band 5s and SES?
Nope, the voting members actually on our board, I don't think we have any SES on our board. All of them are band 5s and 15s.
Okay, thanks.
So, but again, the main one that is an SES is a non-voting member, which is the chair. A non-voting members, of course, is myself, who's the executive secretary. So I don't get the vote, I just get to put everything together. Then we also have representatives from OICR in order to make sure that everything is, you know, legal and diverse and inclusive. And we also have sometimes we do have a scribe, as well as my supervisor sits in sometimes just to see the flow and how things are going.
Gotcha.
We just got another question. It asks, following up on the Administrators Award, each of the 26 recipients on the NSDIS Administrators Award team was awarded $5,000?
No, let me clear that part up. Each of the 26 members are going to have to split the $5,000. So, yep, you're going to get $1.25 each. No, just kidding. Whatever the amount ends up being. So, unlike the bronze award, normally the bronze award, they have a max of 10 too as well. But by it's being administered by the undersec, he will allow exceptions, but you have to actually have a written statement, you know, written document, a written memo saying why it should be exception of more than 10. The administrators, there's really no limit on the number of people. I think right now, one group is like 28 people. They would have to split the 5,000 each. I repeat, each person does not get 5,000. That entire group will have to split the 5. Now, there's quite a few on there that got individual awards, and yes, that individual person will have to split the 5. If there's 2, 2,500 apiece, and so on and so forth.
I'm sure there are a lot of people that are very sad to hear that. Another question that just came in asks, are there program offices that operate their own internal awards programs with varying categories?
Yes, they do. And one of the things you would do is you would actually check with the different awards POCs for those particular line offices. There's a lot of other smaller individual programs that they have. One of the ones that we really been pushing is the On the Spot program. You also have the Cash in Your Account program. And then as OAR, I think they have a Person of the Year, which with their program that may receive as incentives. So it all depends on the particular line offices and also what their budget can afford. So definitely check with their POC. They will have a listing of all of the internal programs that that particular office may offer.
Excellent. Just to add to the earlier question, the asker said, I think 25 people were sad to hear that. We just got another question. It asks, what is the amount of money for the gold and silver award? And is that shared equally among the recipients?
Okay. Yeah, actually, the amount of money that's getting for the gold to silver award is zero. That is a non-monetary award. So you get the prestige and the honor. So unfortunately, as I mentioned, the only 2 award programs that are offered by NOAA overall that is a monetary that gives cash, correction, that give, yeah, we'll say cash, would be the administrators and also the tech transfer. And believe it or not, those are 2 award categories normally have the lowest numbers, because it's the line officers who actually have to give the money. And if it's not, in some cases, if it's not in their budget, then they will limit the number of nominations that they will actually allow to be submitted.
Excellent. Oh, the questions keep coming in. This next question asks, I would like to ask about the length of service awards. Could I contact Darryl Thomas after this webinar?
Sure, you can, not a problem.
Awesome. Okay, yes. And just as a reminder about contacting Darryl and Gerry, if you look to the right, you'll see that there's a handouts option, and this entire beautiful presentation is available there for downloading so that you can get all that information together in one spot. I don't see any more questions. I'm going to give people another moment because we do have 4 more minutes until we have to end this presentation. But as a reminder, I also wanted to let people know that we are recording this whole presentation, and we encourage you to share the link with interested colleagues or watch the beginning of the presentation if you joined us late. We keep the recordings on the NOAA Central Library YouTube channel, as well as the library seminars webpage. I think I think we've come to the end, gentlemen. Any last comments?
No, it was great doing this. I really do enjoy it, and I'm really looking towards the next caveat for this series.
Oh, excellent. Actually, we just got one more question.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Is there a process for amendment, suppose to raise the group limit from 10 to 12 recipients?
Depends on which award you're talking about. So prime example, if you have the bronze award and you haven't submitted yet, you can actually call me, you contact me ahead of time and let me know. It's like, okay, look, we have 11 people that we want to submit, but how will we actually write the actual, it's not an amendment, but it's really, you're asking for an exception. So what I would do is I would supply the memo that you would probably need, the format of the memo that you need. And it's really, like I said, it's precise and to the point on why this additional people are being added. A good example would be that I had a group that they wanted to add four additional people. And main reason was because they couldn't put them in a group because they didn't want to include everybody within those particular operating units of those offices. It was just those 4 people out of those units, out of those operating offices that did the additional work that helped the group. So that was the reason why they wanted the extended number, and that is a justifiable reason. So that exception would actually go with the nomination to the board to let them know, okay, yeah, we have 14 people instead of 10, and this is the reason why, and they're asking if Dr. Jacobs would give the exception for it.
Excellent. We have, I think, our last question for today. How can gold/silver be resubmitted in following year if the accomplishment period has ended?
Well, that's just it. That's why we mentioned about other programs as well, because unlike the gold and silver, the bronze really doesn't have an actual time period. It's when the award comes to fruition. So I understand that your work was done within that time period. If there's some additional aspects of it, or there's some more work that has been done that another impact or something else has happened, then at that point in time, it can be included in the next cycle. But if it isn't, then one of the things you may look at is looking at one of the other award programs that we have. And in some cases, that actually happens.
Excellent. Well, that concludes our hour. I'd like to thank you both for being here today and joining us for this library seminar. This was really fun and very informative. And you're getting lots and lots of things from the audience as well. I know you can see that.
Great.
And to the audience, I really want to tell you that we appreciate that you joined us today. NOAA Central Library is very proud to present the work of the NOAA community and its partners, and we hope you will join us again. So be well, everybody. Take care.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.